The Real and the Counterfeit by Louisa Baldwin and read by Chris Halton. Will Musgrave determined that he would neither keep Christmas alone nor spend it again with his parents and sisters in the south of France. The Musgrave family annually migrated southward from their home in Northumberland, and Will as regularly followed to spend a month with them in the Riviera, till he had almost forgotten what Christmas was like in England. He rebelled at having to leave the country at a time when, if the weather was mild, he should be hunting, or if it was severe, skating, and he had no real or imaginary need to winter in the south. His chest was of iron and his lungs of brass. A raking east wind that drove his parents into their thickest furs, and taught them the number of their teeth by enabling them to count a separate and well-defined ache for each, only brought a deeper colour into the cheek, and a brighter light into the eye of the weatherproof youth. Decidedly he would not go to Cannes, though it was no use annoying his father and mother and disappointing his sisters by telling them beforehand of his determination. Will knew very well how to write a letter to his mother in which his defection should appear as an event brought about by the overmastering power of circumstances to which the sons of Adam must submit. No doubt that a prospect of hunting or skating, as the fates might decree, influenced his decision. But he had also long promised himself the pleasure of a visit from two of his college friends, Hugh Armitage and Horace Lawley, and he asked that they might spend a fortnight with him at Stonecraft, as a little relaxation had been positively ordered for him by his tutor. "Bless him," said his mother fondly when she had read his letter. "I will write to the dear boy and tell him how pleased I am with his firmness and determination." But Mr. Musgrave muttered inarticulate sounds as he listened to his wife, expressive of incredulity rather than of acquiescence, and when he spoke it was to say, "Devil of a row 3 young fellows will kick up alone at Stonecraft. We shall find the stables full of broken-kneed horses when we go home again." Will Musgrave spent Christmas Day with the Armitages at their place near Ripon, and the following night they gave a dance at which he enjoyed himself as only a very young man can do, who has not yet had his fill of dancing, and who would like nothing better than to waltz through life with his arm round his pretty partner's waist. The following day Musgrave and Armitage left for Stonecraft, picking up Lawley on the way, and arriving at their destination late in the evening in the highest spirits and with the keenest appetites. Stonecraft was a delightful haven of refuge at the end of a long journey across country in bitter weather, when the east wind was driving the light dry snow into every nook and cranny. The wide hospitable front door opened into an oak-panelled hall, with a great open fire burning cheerily, and lighted by lamps from overhead that effectually dispelled all gloomy shadows. As soon as Musgrave had entered the house, he seized his friends, and before they had time to shake the snow from their coats, kissed them both under the mistletoe bough, and set the servants tittering in the background. "You're miserable substitutes for your betters," he said, laughing and pushing them from him. "But it's awfully unlucky not to use the mistletoe. Barker, I hope supper's ready, and that it is something very hot and plenty of it, for we've travelled on empty stomachs and brought them with us." And he led his guests upstairs to their rooms. "What a jolly gallery," said Lawley enthusiastically, as they entered a long wide corridor, with many doors and several windows in it, and hung with pictures and trophies of arms. "Yes, it's our one distinguishing feature at Stonecraft," said Musgrave. "It runs the whole length of the house, from the modern end of it to the back, which is very old, and built on the foundations of a Cistercian monastery which once stood on this spot. The gallery is wide enough to drive a carriage and pair down it, and it's the main thoroughfare of the house. My mother takes a constitutional here in bad weather, as though it were the open air, and does it with her bonnet on to aid the delusion." Armitage's attention was attracted by the pictures on the walls, and especially by the life-size portrait of a young man in a blue coat, with powdered hair, sitting under a tree with a staghound lying at his feet. "An ancestor of yours?" he said, pointing at the picture. Oh, they're all one's ancestors, and a motley crew they are, I must say for them. It may amuse you and Lawley to find from which of them I derive my good looks. That pretty youth whom you seem to admire is my great-great-grandfather. He died at 22, a preposterous age for an ancestor. But come along, Armitage, you'll have plenty of time to do justice to the pictures by daylight, and I want to show you your rooms. I see everything is arranged comfortably. We are close together. Our pleasantest rooms are on the gallery, and here we are, nearly at the end of it. Your rooms are opposite to mine, and open into Lawley's, in case you should be nervous in the night and feel lonely so far from home, my dear children." And Musgrave bade his friends make haste, and hurried away whistling cheerfully to his own room. The following morning the friends rose to a white world. 6 inches of fine snow, dry as salt, lay everywhere, the sky overhead a leaden lid, and all the signs of a deep fall yet to come. "Cheerful this, very," said Lawley as he stood with his hands in his pockets, looking out of the window after breakfast. "The snow will have spoilt the ice for skating." "But it won't prevent wild duck shooting," said Armitage. "And I say, Musgrave, we'll rig up a toboggan out there. I see a slope that might have been made on purpose for it. If we get some tobogganing, it may snow day and night for all I care. We shall be masters of the situation anyway." "Well thought of, Armitage," said Musgrave, jumping at the idea. "Yes, but you need 2 slopes and a little valley between for real good tobogganing," objected Lawley. "Otherwise you only rush down the hillock like you do from the Mount Church to Funchal, and then have to retrace your steps as you do there, carrying your car on your back, which lessens the fun considerably." "Well, we can only work with the material at hand," said Armitage. "Let's go and see if we can't find a better place for our toboggan, and something that will do for a car to slide in." "That's easily found. Empty wine cases are the thing, and stout sticks to steer with." And away rushed the young men into the open air, followed by 6 dogs barking joyfully. "By Jove, if the snow keeps firm, we'll put runners on strong chairs and walk over to see the Harradines at Garthside, and ask the girls to come out sledging, and we'll push them," shouted Musgrave to Lawley and Armitage, who had outrun him in the vain attempt to keep up with a deerhound that headed the party. After a long and careful search, they found a piece of land exactly suited to their purpose, and it would have amused their friends to see how hard the young men worked under the beguiling name of pleasure. For 4 hours they worked like navvies, making a toboggan slide. They shovelled away the snow, then with pickaxe and spade levelled the ground so that when a carpet of fresh snow was spread over it, their improvised car would run down a steep incline and be carried by the impetus up another till it came to a standstill in a snowdrift. "If we can only get this bit of engineering done today," said Lawley, chucking a spadeful of earth aside as he spoke, "the slide will be in perfect order for tomorrow." "Yes, and when once it's done for ever," said Armitage, working away cheerfully with his pick where the ground was frozen hard and full of stones, and cleverly keeping his balance on the slope as he did so. "Good work lasts no end of a time, and posterity will bless us for leaving them this magnificent slide." "Posterity may, my dear fellow, but hardly our progenitors if my father should happen to slip down it," said Musgrave. When their task was finished and the friends were transformed in appearance from navvies into gentlemen, they set out through thick-falling snow to walk to Garthside to call on their neighbours, the Harradines. They had earned their pleasant tea and lively talk, their blood was still aglow from their exhilarating work, and their spirits at the highest point. They did not return to Stonecraft till they had compelled the girls to name a time when they would come with their brothers and be launched down the scientifically prepared slide, in wine cases well padded with cushions for the occasion. Late that night the young men sat smoking and chatting together in the library. They had played billiards till they were tired, and Lawley had sung sentimental songs, accompanying himself on the banjo till even he was weary, to say nothing of what his listeners might be. Armitage sat leaning his light curly head back in the chair, gently puffing out a cloud of tobacco smoke, and he was the first to break the silence that had fallen on the little company. "Musgrave," he said suddenly, "an old house is not complete unless it is haunted. You ought to have a ghost of your own at Stonecraft." Musgrave threw down the yellow-backed novel he had just picked up and became all attention. "So we have, my dear fellow, only it has not been seen by any of us since my grandfather's time. It is the desire of my life to become personally acquainted with our family ghost." Armitage laughed, but Lawley said, "You would not say that if you really believed in ghosts. I believe in them most devoutly, but I naturally wish to have my faith confirmed by sight. You believe in them too, I can see. Then you see what does not exist, and so far you are in a fair way to see ghosts. No, my state of mind is this," continued Lawley. "I neither believe nor entirely disbelieve in ghosts. I am open to conviction on the subject. Many men of sound judgment believe in them, and others of equally good mental capacity don't believe in them. I merely regard the case of the bogies as not proven. They may or may not exist, but till their existence is plainly demonstrated, I decline to add such an uncomfortable article to my creed as a belief in bogies." Musgrave did not reply, but Armitage laughed a strident laugh. "I'm one against two. I'm in an overwhelming minority," he said. "Musgrave frankly confesses his belief in ghosts, and you are neutral, neither believing nor disbelieving, but open to conviction. Now, I'm a complete unbeliever in the supernatural, root and branch. People's nerves no doubt play them queer tricks, and will continue to do so to the end of the chapter. And if I were so fortunate as to see Musgrave's family ghost tonight, I should no more believe in it than I do now. By the way, Musgrave, is the ghost a lady or a gentleman?" he asked flippantly. "I don't think you deserve to be told." "Don't you know that a ghost is neither he nor she?" said Lawley. "Like a corpse, it is always it." "That is a piece of very definite information from a man who neither believes nor disbelieves in ghosts. How do you come by it, Lawley?" asked Armitage. "Mayn't a man be well informed on a subject, although he suspends his judgment about it? I think I have the only logical mind among us. Musgrave believes in ghosts, though he has never seen one. You don't believe in them, and say that you would not be convinced if you saw one, which is not wise, it seems to me. It is not necessary to my peace of mind to have a definite opinion on the subject. After all, it is only a matter of patience, for if ghosts really exist, we shall each be one in the course of time, and then, if we've nothing better to do and are allowed to play such unworthy pranks, we may appear again on the scene and impartially scare our credulous and incredulous surviving friends. Then I shall try to be beforehand with you, Lawley, and turn bogey first. It would suit me better to scare than to be scared. But Musgrave, do tell me about your family ghost. I'm really interested in it, and I'm quite respectful now." "Well, mind you are, and I shall have no objection to tell you what I know about it, which is briefly this. Stonecraft, as I told you, is built on the site of an old Cistercian monastery, destroyed at the time of the Reformation. The back part of the house rests on the old foundations, and its walls are built with the stones that were once part and parcel of the monastery. The ghost that has been seen by members of the Musgrave family for 3 centuries past is that of a Cistercian monk, dressed in the white habit of his order. Who he was, or why he has haunted the scenes of his earthly life so long, there is no tradition to enlighten us. The ghost has usually been seen once or twice in each generation, but as I said, it has not visited us since my grandfather's time, so like a comet, it should be due again presently." "How you must regret that was before your time," said Armitage. "Of course I do, but I don't despair of seeing it yet. At least I know where to look for it. It has always made its appearance in the gallery, and I have my bedroom close to the spot where it was last seen, in the hope that if I open my door suddenly, some moonlight night, I may find the monk standing there." "Standing where?" asked the incredulous Armitage. "In the gallery, to be sure, midway between your 2 doors and mine. That is where my grandfather last saw it. He was waked in the dead of night by the sound of a heavy door shutting. He ran into the gallery where the noise came from, and standing opposite the door of the room I occupy was the white figure of the Cistercian monk. As he looked, it glided the length of the gallery and melted like mist into the wall. The spot where he disappeared is on the old foundations of the monastery, so that he was evidently returning to his own quarters. "And your grandfather believed that he saw a ghost?" asked Armitage disdainfully. Could he doubt the evidence of his senses? He saw the thing as clearly as we see each other now, and it disappeared like a thin vapour against the wall. "My dear fellow, don't you think that it sounds more like an anecdote of your grandmother than of your grandfather?" remarked Armitage. He did not intend to be rude, though he succeeded in being so, as he was instantly aware by the expression of cold reserve that came over Musgrave's frank face. "Forgive me, but I never can take a ghost story seriously," he said. "But this much I will concede: they may have existed long ago in what were literally the Dark Ages, when rushlights and sputtering dip candles could not keep the shadows at bay. But in this latter part of the 19th century, when gas and the electric light have turned night into day, you have destroyed the very conditions that produced the ghost, or rather the belief in it, which is the same thing. Darkness has always been bad for human nerves. I can't explain why, but so it is. My mother was in advance of the age on the subject, and always insisted on having a good light burning in the night nursery, so that when as a child I woke from a bad dream, I was never frightened by the darkness, and in consequence I have grown up a complete unbeliever in ghosts, spectres, wraiths, apparitions, doppelgangers, and the whole bogey crew of them." And Armitage looked round calmly and complacently. "Perhaps I might have felt as you do if I had not begun life with the knowledge that our house was haunted," replied Musgrave, with a visible pride in the ancestral ghost. "I only wish that I could convince you of the existence of the supernatural from my own personal experience. I always feel it to be the weak point in a ghost story, that it is never told in the first person. It is a friend, or a friend of one's friend, who was the lucky man and actually saw the ghost." And Armitage registered a vow to himself that within a week from that time Musgrave should see his family ghost with his own eyes, and ever after be able to speak with his enemy in the gate. Several ingenious schemes occurred to his inventive mind for producing the desired apparition, but he had to keep them burning in his breast. Lawley was the last man to aid and abet him in playing a practical joke on their host, and he feared he should have to work without an ally. And though he would have enjoyed his help and sympathy, it struck him that it would be a double triumph achieved if both his friends should see the Cistercian monk. Musgrave already believed in ghosts and was prepared to meet one more than halfway, and Lawley, though he pretended to a judicial and impartial mind concerning them, was not unwilling to be convinced of their existence if it could be visibly demonstrated to him. Armitage became more cheerful than usual, as circumstances favoured his impious plot. The weather was propitious for the attempt he meditated, as the moon rose late and was approaching the full. On consulting the almanac, he saw with delight that 3 nights hence she would rise at 2 a.m., and an hour later the end of the gallery nearest Musgrave's room would be flooded with her light. Though Armitage could not have an accomplice under the roof, he needed one within reach, who could use needle and thread to run up a specious imitation of the white robe and hood of a Cistercian monk. And the next day, when they went to the Harradines to take the girls out in their improvised sledges, it fell to his lot to take charge of the youngest Miss Harradine. As he pushed the low chair on runners over the hard snow, nothing was easier than to bend forward and whisper to Kate, "I am going to take you as fast as I can so that no one can hear what we are saying. I want you to be very kind and help me to play a perfectly harmless practical joke on Musgrave. Will you promise to keep my secret for a couple of days when we shall all enjoy a laugh over it together?" "Oh yes, I'll help you with pleasure, but make haste and tell me what your practical joke is to be." I want to play ancestral ghost to Musgrave and make him believe that he has seen the Cistercian monk in his white robe and cowl that was last seen by his respected credulous grandpapa. What a good idea! I know he is always longing to see the ghost, and takes it as a personal affront that it has never appeared to him. But might it not startle him more than you intend? And Kate turned her glowing face towards him, and Armitage involuntarily stopped the little sledge, for it is one thing to wish to see a ghost, you know, and quite another to think that you see it. Oh, you need not fear for Musgrave. We shall be conferring a positive favour on him, in helping him to see what he's so wishful to see. I'm arranging it so that Lawley shall have the benefit of the show as well, and see the ghost at the same time with him. And if two strong men are not a match for one bogey, leave alone a homemade counterfeit one. It's a pity. Well, if you think it's a safe trick to play, no doubt you are right. But how can I help you with the monk's habit, I suppose? Exactly. I shall be so grateful to you if you will run up some sort of garment that will look passably like a white Cistercian habit to a couple of men, who I don't think will be in a critical frame of mind during the short time they are allowed to see it. I really wouldn't trouble you if I were anything of a sempster. Is that the masculine of sempstress? Myself. But I'm not. A thimble bothers me very much, and at college, when I have to sew on a button, I push the needle through on one side with a threepenny bit, and pull it out on the other with my teeth, and it's a laborious process. Kate laughed merrily. Oh, I can easily make something or other out of a white dressing gown, fit for a ghost to wear, and fasten a hood to it. Armitage then told her the details of his deeply laid scheme, how he would go to his room when Musgrave and Lawley went to theirs on the eventful night, and sit up till he was sure that they were fast asleep. Then, when the moon had risen, and if her light was obscured by clouds, he would be obliged to postpone the entertainment till he could be sure of her aid. He would dress himself as the ghostly monk, put out the candles, softly open the door, and look into the gallery to see that all was ready. Then I shall slam the door with an awful bang, for that was the noise that heralded the ghost's last appearance, and it will wake Musgrave and Lawley, and bring them both out of their rooms like a shot. Lawley's door is next to mine, and Musgrave's opposite, so that each will command a magnificent view of the monk at the same instant, and they can compare notes afterwards at their leisure. But what shall you do if they find you out at once? Oh, they won't do that. The cowl will be drawn over my face, and I shall stand with my back to the moonlight. My private belief is that in spite of Musgrave's yearnings after a ghost, he won't like it when he thinks he sees it. Nor will Lawley, and I expect they'll dart back into their rooms and lock themselves in as soon as they catch sight of the monk. That would give me time to whip back into my room, turn the key, strip off my finery, hide it, and be roused with difficulty from a deep sleep when they come knocking at my door to tell me what a horrible thing has happened. And one more ghost story will be added to those already in circulation. And Armitage laughed aloud in anticipation of the fun. It is to be hoped that everything will happen just as you have planned it, and then we shall all be pleased. And now will you turn the sledge round and let us join the others? We have done conspiring for the present. If we are seen talking so exclusively to each other, they will suspect that we are brewing some mischief together. Oh, how cold the wind is! I like to hear it whistle in my hair, said Kate as Armitage deftly swung the little sledge around and drove it quickly before him, facing the keen north wind as she buried her chin in her warm furs. Armitage found an opportunity to arrange with Kate that he would meet her halfway between Stonecraft and her home on the afternoon of the next day but one, when she would give him a parcel containing the monk's habit. The Harradines and their house party were coming on Thursday afternoon to try the toboggan slide at Stonecraft, but Kate and Armitage were willing to sacrifice their pleasure to the business they had in hand. There was no other way but for the conspirators to give their friends the slip for a couple of hours, when the important parcel would be safely given to Armitage, secretly conveyed by him to his own room, and locked up till he should want it in the small hours of the morning. When the young people arrived at Stonecraft, Miss Harradine apologised for her younger sister's absence, occasioned, she said, by a severe headache. Armitage's heart beat rapidly when he heard the excuse, and he thought how convenient it was for the inscrutable sex to be able to turn on a headache at will, as one turns on hot or cold water from a tap. After luncheon, as there were more gentlemen than ladies, and Armitage's services were not necessary at the toboggan slide, he elected to take the dogs for a walk, and set off in the gayest spirits to keep his appointment with Kate. Much as he enjoyed maturing his ghost plot, he enjoyed still more the confidential talks with Kate that had sprung out of it, and he was sorry that this was to be the last of them. But the moon in heaven could not be stayed for the performance of his little comedy, and her light was necessary to its due performance. The ghost must be seen at 3 o'clock next morning, at the time and place arranged, when the proper illumination for its display would be forthcoming. As Armitage walked swiftly over the hard snow, he caught sight of Kate at a distance. She waved her hand gaily and pointed smiling to the rather large parcel she was carrying. The red glow of the winter sun shone full upon her, bringing out the warm tints in her chestnut hair, and filling her brown eyes with soft lustre, and Armitage looked at her with undisguised admiration. "It's awfully good of you to help me so kindly," he said as he took the parcel from her, "and I shall come round tomorrow to tell you the result of our practical joke. But how is the headache?" he asked, smiling. "You look so unlike aches or pains of any kind, I was forgetting to inquire about it." "Thank you, it is better. It was not altogether a made-up headache, though it happened opportunely. I was awake in the night, not in the least repenting that I was helping you, of course, but wishing it was all well over. One has heard of this kind of trick sometimes proving too successful, of people being frightened out of their wits by a make-believer ghost, and I should never forgive myself if Mr. Musgrave or Mr. Lawley were seriously alarmed. Really, Miss Harradine, I don't think that you need give yourself a moment's anxiety about the nerves of a couple of burly young men. If you are afraid for anyone, let it be for me. If they find me out, they will fall upon me and rend me limb from limb on the spot. I can assure you I am the only one for whom there is anything to fear." And the transient gravity passed like a cloud from Kate's bright face, and she admitted that it was rather absurd to be uneasy about two stalwart young men compounded more of muscle than of nerves. And they parted, Kate hastening home as the early twilight fell, and Armitage, after watching her out of sight, retracing his steps with the precious parcel under his arm. He entered the house unobserved, and reaching the gallery by a back staircase, felt his way in the dark to his room. He deposited his treasure in the wardrobe, locked it up, and attracted by the sound of laughter, ran downstairs to the drawing-room. Will Musgrave and his friends, after a couple of hours of glowing exercise, had been driven indoors by the darkness, nothing loath to partake of tea and hot cakes, while they talked and laughed over the adventures of the afternoon. "Wherever have you been, old fellow?" said Musgrave as Armitage entered the room. "I believe you've a private toboggan of your own somewhere that you keep quiet. If only the moon rose at a decent time instead of at some unearthly hour in the night, when it's not of the slightest use to anyone, we would have gone out looking for you. You wouldn't have had far to seek, you'd have met me on the turnpike road. But why this subdued and chastened taste? Imagine preferring a constitutional on the high road when you might have been tobogganing with us. My poor friend, I'm afraid you are not feeling well," said Musgrave, with an affectation of sympathy that ended in boyish laughter and a wrestling match between the two young men, in the course of which Lawley more than once saved the tea-table from being violently overthrown. Presently, when the cakes and toast had disappeared before the youthful appetites, lanterns were lighted, and Musgrave and his friends and the Harradine brothers set out as a bodyguard to take the young ladies home. Armitage was in riotous spirits, and finding that Musgrave and Lawley had appropriated the two prettiest girls in the company waltzed untrammelled along the road before them, lantern in hand, like a very will-o'-the-wisp. The young people did not part till they had planned fresh pleasures for the morrow, and Musgrave, Lawley, and Armitage returned to Stonecraft to dinner, making the thin air ring to the jovial songs with which they beguiled the homeward journey. Late in the evening, when the young men were sitting in the library, Musgrave suddenly exclaimed as he reached down a book from an upper shelf, "Hello! I've come on my grandfather's diary. Here's his own account of how he saw the White Monk in the gallery. Lawley, you may read it if you like, but it shan't be wasted on an unbeliever like Armitage. By Jove, what an odd coincidence! It's 40 years this very night, the 30th of December, since he saw the ghost." And he handed the book to Lawley, who read Mr. Musgrave's narrative with close attention. "Is it a case of almost thou persuadest me?" asked Armitage, looking at his intent and knitted brow. "I hardly know what I think. Nothing positive either way at any rate." And he dropped the subject, for he saw Musgrave did not wish to discuss the family ghost in Armitage's unsympathetic presence. They retired late, and the hour that Armitage had so gleefully anticipated drew near. "Good night, both of you," said Musgrave as he entered his room. "I shall be asleep in 5 minutes. All this exercise in the open air makes a man absurdly sleepy at night." And the young men closed their doors, and silence settled down upon Stonecraft Hall. Armitage and Lawley's rooms were next to each other, and in less than a quarter of an hour Lawley shouted a cheery good night, which was loudly returned by his friend. Then Armitage felt somewhat mean and stealthy. Musgrave and Lawley were both confidingly asleep, while he sat up alert and vigilant, maturing a mischievous plot that had for its object the awakening and scaring of both the innocent sleepers. He dared not smoke to pass the tedious time, lest the telltale fumes should penetrate into the next room through the keyhole, and inform Lawley if he woke for an instant that his friend was awake too, and behaving as though it were high noon. Armitage spread the monk's white habit on the bed, and smiled as he touched it to think that Kate's pretty fingers had been so recently at work upon it. He need not put it on for a couple of hours yet, and to occupy the time he sat down to write. He would have liked to take a nap, but he knew that if he once yielded to sleep, nothing would wake him till he was called at 8 o'clock in the morning. As he bent over his desk, the big clock in the hall struck 1, so suddenly and sharply it was like a blow on the head, and he started violently. "What a swinish sleep Lawley must be in that he can't hear a noise like that," he thought, as snoring became audible from the next room. Then he drew the candles nearer to him, and settled once more to his writing, and a pile of letters testified to his industry, when again the clock struck. But this time he expected it, and it did not startle him. Only the cold made him shiver. "If I hadn't made up my mind to go through with this confounded piece of folly, I'd go to bed now," he thought. "But I can't break faith with Kate. She's made the robe, and I've got to wear it, worse luck." And with a great yawn he threw down his pen and rose to look out of the window. It was a clear frosty night. At the edge of the dark sky, sprinkled with stars, a faint band of cold light heralded the rising moon. How different from the grey light of dawn that ushers in the cheerful day is the solemn rising of the moon in the depth of a winter night. Her light is not to rouse a sleeping world and lead men forth to their labour. It falls on the closed eyes of the weary, and silvers the graves of those whose rest shall be broken no more. Armitage was not easily impressed by the sombre aspect of nature, though he was quick to feel her gay and cheerful influence. But he would be glad when the fast was over, and he no longer obliged to watch the rise and spread of the pale light, solemn as the dawn of the last day. He turned from the window and proceeded to make himself into the best imitation of a Cistercian monk that he could contrive. He slipped the white habit over all his clothing that he might seem of portly size, and marked dark circles round his eyes, and thickly powdered his face a ghastly white. Armitage silently laughed at his reflection in the glass, and wished that Kate could see him now. Then he softly opened the door and looked into the gallery. The moonlight was shimmering duskily on the end window to the right of his door and Lawley's. It would soon be where he wanted it, and neither too light nor too dark for the success of his plan. He stepped silently back again to wait, and a feeling as much akin to nervousness as he had ever known came over him. His heart beat rapidly. He started like a timid girl when the silence was suddenly broken by the hooting of an owl. He no longer cared to look at himself in the glass. He had taken fright at the mortal pallor of his powdered face. Hang it all, I wish Lawley hadn't left off snoring. It was quite companionable to hear him. And again he looked into the gallery, and now the moon shed her cold beams where he intended to stand. He put out the light and opened the door wide, and stepping into the gallery threw it to with an echoing slam that only caused Musgrave and Lawley to start and turn on their pillows. Armitage stood dressed as the ghostly monk of Stonecraft, in the pale moonlight in the middle of the gallery, waiting for the door on either side to fly open and reveal the terrified faces of his friends. He had time to curse the ill luck that made them sleep so heavily that night of all nights, and to fear lest the servants had heard the noise their master had been deaf to, and would come hurrying to the spot and spoil the sport. But no one came, and as Armitage stood, the objects in the long gallery became clearer every moment, as his sight accommodated itself to the dim light. I never noticed before that there was a mirror at the end of the gallery. I should not have believed the moonlight was bright enough for me to see my own reflection so far off. Only white stands out so in the dark. But is it my own reflection? Confound it all, the thing's moving and I'm standing still. I know what it is. It's Musgrave dressed up to try to give me a fright, and Lawley's helping him. They forestalled me. That's why they didn't come out of their rooms when I made a noise fit to wake the dead. Odd, we're both playing the same practical joke at the same moment. Come on, my counterfeit bogey, and we'll see which of us turns white-livered first. But to Armitage's surprise, that rapidly became terror. The white figure that he believed to be Musgrave disguised, and like himself playing ghost, advanced towards him, slowly gliding over the floor which its feet did not touch. Armitage's courage was high, and he determined to hold his ground against these something ingeniously contrived by Musgrave and Lawley to terrify him into belief in the supernatural. But a feeling was creeping over the strong young man that he had never known before. He opened his dry mouth as the thing floated towards him, and there issued a hoarse, inarticulate cry that woke Musgrave and Lawley and brought them to their doors in a moment, not knowing by what strange fright they had been startled out of their sleep. Do not think them cowards that they shrank back, appalled from the ghostly forms the moonlight revealed to them in the gallery. But as Armitage vehemently repelled the horror that drifted nearer and nearer to him, the cowl slipped from his head, and his friends recognized his white face, distorted by fear, and, springing towards him as he staggered, supported him in their arms. The Cistercian monk passed them like a white mist that sank into the wall, and Musgrave and Lawley were alone with the dead body of their friend, whose masquerading dress had become his shroud. The end.